She's an award-winning writer, a hunting guide, archery and rifle instructor, keynote speaker, and all-around outdoors woman who encourages you to get outside, hunt, fish, shoot, and savor all that life has to offer. And now, here's your host, Mia Anstein.
Hello, it's Mia visiting with you again. I am so happy today to be talking to you. I am coming to you from my new office and I'm so excited. I'm not quite unpacked all the way yet, but I did get enough stuff put away and organized that I can actually use my desk and my computer and one of my microphones to record for you today. I have been super busy, as I mentioned in the last episode, and I have a lot to talk to you about today. So stay tuned because I'll be coming at you with a fun fact about desert bighorn sheep, a little information about a girl and a gun, and then some archery tips for some listeners that asked about those. I'll also be talking about the DC project, and I'm going to be talking to you about preparing for the fall hunting seasons, and I'll talk to you about Colorado's second draw. Be right back.
This winter, stay warm from head to toe with WSI Sports' heater gear layers. Use Leah's affiliate code, LLCO10, at WSISports.com and get 10% off your order. All products are proudly made in the USA. WSI Sports is bringing back pride in American-made clothing. That code once again, LLCO10 for 10% off at WSISports.com.
In the last episode, I mentioned that we were in Grand Junction, Colorado, and while we were there, we had some time to tour around a little bit. We went to the Colorado National Monument, and we didn't just go there once. We went there 3 times, and we did that because we saw sign of bighorn sheep. In the Colorado National Monument, they have desert bighorns. Our first trip to the monument, we saw tracks and scat, and that brought us back looking for more. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about desert bighorn sheep and their tracks. The tracks of a bighorn ram can reach up to 4 inches in length. An average large ram track is about 3.5 inches long and 2.5 inches wide. The smallest lamb tracks are about 1.25 inches long. Can you believe that? A 1.25 inch long track. Isn't that cool? Desert bighorns, their tracks might look a little different depending on the terrain. On a slope, their toes might be separated like 1 inch or more. And this is because they're able to track up and down those crazy rocks. Their hooves are designed to spread so they can grip better. And I am reading you a quote from the Desert Bighorn book. It's Life, History, Ecology, and Management is what this book is. I have seen bighorn in frisky moments jumping off rocks and twisting clear around as they hit gravelly sand below, churning the surface. I have also found the earth to be distinctively churned where rams have been fighting. Isn't that cool? So now you kind of have an idea about the size of a ram track. Let me know, have you ever seen desert bighorn rams in the wild? On our second trip back to the monument, we did find one and photographed it, and you can find that on my social media outlets. Let's look up Mia Anstein and you'll see some desert bighorns there. So when I last talked to you, I was in Grand Junction, Colorado, and I was up there because I was going to be a keynote speaker at the A Girl and a Gun leadership, their intro opening ceremony event, and I also went up there to teach archery. I taught basic archery classes, 4 of them, and 2 introduction to bow hunting classes. I just wanted to give you a recap because it was a lot of fun. I just really like it a lot, and it was my first time to be at a Girl and a Gun event or conference. I actually met the founder, Juliana Crowder, at SHOT Show about 10 years ago, and she had just started a Girl and a Gun, and she had been at the range shooting, and she felt like more women needed to learn to shoot. So she started hosting women's shooting classes and created a Girl and a Gun. As a teacher of archery, shooting, and as a keynote speaker, I travel all around the country. And when I went to this event, I was pleasantly surprised at how many women were at the event. It was just amazing. There were about 200 women that I spoke to at the leadership event. And then overall at the actual conference, there were over 600 people there. This was their 9th conference that they hosted. If you look it up, you go to agirlandagun.org. I will put that in the show notes, a link to it if you would like to go visit them. But it's called A Girl and a Gun Women's Shooting League, and they are the firearms industry's first large-scale chapter-based women's organization. They are really doing things right. I would say this wasn't a super high-end fancy event where somebody would feel uncomfortable or out of place. I actually attend some of those types of events as well, and I personally enjoy them, but I have had friends and colleagues who have mentioned that they don't like events where you have to get all gussied up. Well, this one, it was for everyday ladies, and they were all there, very welcoming, and had a great time. The participants included about 450 members of A Girl and a Gun, and they represented 96 A Girl and a Gun chapters, which come from 35 different states. The women were able to choose from 250 training classes, which were run by 54 firearms and other educators. And I say other educators because even though I am a firearms instructor, I was there teaching archery. There were other classes as well, such as I believe they had an AR build and different stuff like that. So not everything was shooting. Some of it was dealing with anti-gun issues, dealing with media and things like that. The event was held at the Cameo Shooting and Education Complex, and that is owned by Colorado Parks and Wildlife. It was so cool to get to see that facility because when I attend Game Commission meetings at CPW events, I have seen this come through the process of the planning stage to the developing to finally opening. And last year I was supposed to go, but with COVID, I wasn't able to. And this year to actually go and see the facility, it was outstanding. I just really enjoyed it, and I do recommend if you are in the area, head out there. They have sporting clays you can go shoot, archery, of course, different shooting bays for various ranges and stuff like that. But check them out. I'll also put a link to the Cameo Shooting and Education Complex in the show notes. One thing about that place is I actually was joined by 2 of CPW's an employee and a volunteer, and they both helped design the archery range, and it was great. Something that I plan to do next year is I plan to add a 3rd class. So maybe I'll do 2 basic classes, 2 intro to hunting classes, and 1 3D class and take them through a quick loop, which is 10 targets on a course on the hill. They also have what's called the extreme loop, and that one, it would just take a little bit longer to get through, but in the time frame that I had teaching, I'm pretty sure I could have gotten a 3D loop in there had I had experienced archers in the classes. So that's something to look forward to. In the basic archery class, if you are interested in that, message me, either direct message me on social media. You can find me on Instagram at Mia Anstein, or look for Mac_outdoors and you can message us there, and we'll send you information about a basic archery course that we did online that you can register for. In that class, it's kind of an A to Z of getting started. So we're going to teach you how to develop a range. We're going to talk to you about your stance, your shot setup, and how you're going to go through all of that, what gear you would need if you're going to be shooting at home, and so forth. So that's kind of basic archery. An introduction to bow hunting. Those were students who had already shot before, and so we weren't going through the basics of how to hold a bow and, where your anchor point is, how to draw the bow, how to release the arrow, all of that. It was more just diving in to hunting, and we discussed tactics about bow hunting. Maybe there were several women who were in the 2 classes that are wanting to elk hunt. So we did talk about elk hunting tactics, and we went through some drills about how to draw, when to draw, and we also worked on holding at full draw, as well as working on a safe letdown of the bow. And what a letdown is, if you don't know, if you're not already into archery, that is having your arrow knocked, which never draw a bow without a knocked arrow. So you have your arrow knocked, you go to full draw, and then you decide you're not going to shoot that animal, so you have to safely let that back down to the starting point without releasing the arrow. So that was something that we practiced, and a variety of other little drills, but that was quite fun. We also hosted a contest. I partnered with Vormi, who I've mentioned in my episodes before. I partnered with them and gave away a shirt to one lady from the basic group and one lady from the bow hunting group. And how we decided which lady is, I held a contest and we shot at 3D targets for score. We did have some tie scores, so all of those names were thrown into a hat, so to speak, a hat, not a real hat. But we used an online app to spin and draw a random winner. And so congratulations to the 2 ladies that won some Vormi shirts. Great gear. Again, if you want to look at Vormi, I'll put a link in the show notes and you can check them out. If you would like to learn more about A Girl and a Gun, as I mentioned, that will be in the show notes. If you are interested in joining a chapter or creating a chapter, I would encourage you to do that. And maybe I will see you next year for Celebrate 2022. Registration for that opens on September 1st of this year.
For the love of the outdoors, open spaces, and mountains, shop www.mia.limited/1. The Mac Outdoors Mountains Are Calling series of apparel is perfect for you or your loved ones. Support the channel and shop now. www.mia.limited/1.
Now, we've been talking about archery, and I told you that I would talk about archery in this episode, but I wasn't talking about the A Girl and a Gun event. What I was talking about is archery tips separate from A Girl and a Gun. And something that I wanted to mention to you is that if you do plan to go archery hunting, then it would be great. If you've already taken Hunter Ed, that's good. But go online and look for a bow hunter education course. I will put a link to that in the show notes as well. In that bow hunter education course, you're going to learn a lot more than just what you learned in Hunter Ed. You're going to learn the history of archery. You're going to learn about bow maintenance, about different types of broadheads and tips. These are things that are really important. You will also learn about archery etiquette and ethics and some safety issues, as well as how to care for your bow. So that is my archery tip of the day. I hope that you will head over and check that out. It could be great for you, even if you aren't looking to start archery hunting. Before I went to A Girl and a Gun, I mentioned actually in the last episode as well that I had been to Washington, D.C. with the D.C. Project, and I wanted to give you a more in-depth view of what we did while we were there. There were 12 of us that traveled from across the United States, and we met with elected officials in Washington, D.C. What we did is we brought our voices to defend the Second Amendment, and we made a case that gun rights are women's rights. And we pitched to groups of trusted lawmakers and asked them to please look to us as a resource. In just 2.5 days, we met with more than 50 policymakers and senior staff. The DC Project raised awareness that of the 8.4 million new firearms owners last year, 3.4 million of those were women. 3.4 million new gun owners that are women. That is just awesome. But studies show a correlation between increased safety and education training and a decreased unintentional gun-related injuries or fatalities. By fostering firearm safety and education, not feel-good legislation, the DC Project encourages the preservation of America's gun culture and highlights the diversity of a rising demographic of female gun owners. During our meetings with elected officials and their staff, we discussed the public policy challenges that threaten the Second Amendment. It was paramount to weigh in with legislators on proposed legislation, including enhanced background checks, the nomination of David Chipman to lead the ATF, gun-free zones, and red flag laws. The women of the DC Project, we proactively offered to provide testimony on critical legislation in the House and the Senate. As a result, Tennessee Delegate Nikki Gozer testified before the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on the Constitution, and she talked about red flag laws. Currently, in the coming week, Diana Muller, who is the founder of the DC Project, she will be testifying on another issue. It is really great to have a woman's voice to be the voice of gun owners. I think we are a demographic who has been left out in the past, and now we are actually not just being listened to, but we're being sought out. Ashley Hlebrinsky is actually a member of the DC Project. She was called to testify about ghost guns. You can look that up in the show notes. I have a link to her testimony. But she used to be the curator of the Buffalo Bill Center of the West, the Cody Firearms Museum, which I've done an interview with her before, and she is just amazing, really just amazingly intelligent woman and knows so much about guns. She is now a senior firearms scholar. She has a master's degree in American history and museum studies from the University of Delaware. And she testified on the ghost guns and did just an outstanding job. Overall, our trips with the DC Project have just been very productive. We encourage you to make your voice heard, and we want you to call your senators and tell them how to vote on issues that are important to you. Let them know if you oppose someone's nomination or if you support a bill that may be going in the House or the Senate. Your voice does make a difference. The only thing that doesn't make a difference is if we just gripe on social media and complain. What we have to do is stand up and speak up, and I hope that you will do this as well. I've put a link in the show notes to the DC Project. Their website is dcproject.info. If you can run for an office, I highly encourage that. If you can even run for your local school board or your local county commissioner's office, anything would be very helpful. Our voices are being left out, and the only way we are going to gain ground is to start standing up, speaking up, and doing work and filling positions. Okay, so now we are going to talk more hunting. And I had said I was going to talk about preparing for the fall, and then I was going to talk about the secondary draw. But first, I'm going to talk about that secondary draw, and then we'll talk about how to prepare for fall hunts. Colorado Parks and Wildlife offers a secondary big game draw. And what this is it kind of replaced what used to be a leftover draw. And what it does is it takes leftover licenses that weren't drawn in the first go round. Like if somebody had 1,000 tags in one game management unit and only 800 people applied, they would have 200 tags left over. So that would kind of be a leftover draw. Well, what it is those now go to a secondary draw. The secondary draw is actually giving a preference to youth hunters. They have 100% preference in that secondary draw. All secondary youth applications are processed prior to any adult ones. So this is really a great chance for the kids to get a hunting license. When you're looking to that secondary draw, the application process for that begins on June 16th. It is only open from June 16th to the 30th, so you have to apply within that time period. You'll have to study the regulations guide to get your hunt codes before you go to apply, and once you have the codes down, you can go to cpwshop.com. That's where you'll go and apply. Once the secondary draw is done and the results have been posted, there actually will be again a leftover license. So you have your primary draw, and those results, if you've already applied in the first draw, those results should be coming out any day now for elk, moose, deer, and pronghorn, and bear. So you can check those out, and if you didn't get what you were looking for, you can look to apply for another tag. Once that secondary draw is released, then there will be leftover tags that you can go look at. And you can find the leftover tags. Just go into Parks and Wildlife and go to things to do, and you'll see hunt big game, and down in there you'll see the leftover, and that's where you'll be able to find the list of leftover tags. So now to talk about preparing for your fall big game hunt. When you have drawn your elk hunts, there is a lot to look at. I've had people send me questions. What do I need to do to get ready to elk hunt in Colorado? That's pretty vague, to be honest. In Colorado, elk hunting starts the beginning of September with archery season. And in September, it is super hot. There are some areas that are limited draw, some are over the counter. Some areas you may be hunting at 9,000 feet. Some areas you may be hunting at 5,000 feet. The terrain is going to vary. You may be in some high desert habitat, or you may be in mountain timber habitat. So depending where you're going to hunt will tell you what kind of gear you need to bring. Something that I will tell you in Colorado in September is that the temperature fluctuates immensely. I've been in September in 90-degree temperatures, and I've also been in blizzards and woken up to a foot of snow on the ground during September archery season, and that's hunting at about 9,000 feet. So you can be running into a lot. I do have a gear list on my website, which I'll put a link to the gear list in the show notes for you. But these are things that I suggest you take regardless, and that gets you the basics to get going. Another thing you'll have to look at is if you're in rifle season, you may be hunting, again, similar conditions. You might be hunting for season and have snow the entire time. So if you're going on a do-it-yourself hunt and you would like to schedule an appointment to visit with me about your hunt, you can email me at contact@miaanstein.com, and I will schedule an appointment with you to discuss your hunt, where you're going, and try to tailor some answers to specifically your hunt. For now, we've talked about the temperatures fluctuating. We've talked about elevation. We also need to talk about if you're going on that do-it-yourself hunt, or if you're going with a guide or outfitter. If you're going to do a do-it-yourself, you're going to need to pack some tents and gear and that kind of stuff. If you're going with a guide or outfitter, just ask them. They'll know what season, they'll know where they're taking you, and they can tell you what to bring. And they will also tell you about getting in shape. And I'll get to that in just a minute. But right now, I wanted to tell you, with a guide or outfitter, that doesn't mean that they have to be with you the entire time that you're hunting. You can hire a guide to take you and your gear, your tent, your pack, all your food, and they can take you into wherever you want to go in the woods and drop you off. They have to be licensed and permitted to take you into Forest Service area. So you can hire them to do that, or you can hire them to rent you their camp with their cots and cook stoves and all that stuff. Or you can hire them to have the camp and have a camp cook and meals. Or you can even hire them to have a guide that will take you out on your hunting adventures every day. So there is a wide variety of what you're going to be looking at if you hire an outfitter or a hunting guide. So check that out. Again, if you have questions, let me know. The biggest thing that I recommend to anybody who wants to come hunt in Colorado is get in shape. And getting in shape doesn't mean that you go for a stroll down the road every day or that you go for a cruise on your bike every day. It means that you need to work out. You need to build your endurance. You need to, if you're going to go for that stroll, put your backpack on with 50 pounds of weight in there and go hike up and down the bleachers at the stadium, at the local school if they will allow you, or go hike up and down a hill in the area if they will allow you. You most likely are going to be hiking in Colorado if you're hunting elk, although I do guide for some landowners where we hunt from tree stands and blinds. So it's not always 100%. And this is the thing with hunting in Colorado is there is a huge variety. So find out and decide what you're going to do. Get in shape, go hiking, run with that backpack on if you can, or take a brisk walk up that hill and then practice steadying yourself for a shot. You don't have to actually have your loaded firearm or whatever, or your bow. If you are archery hunting, yes, get 3D targets and run with your backpack on, stop, aim, shoot, time yourself. In the next episode, I will talk to you about some drills that you can do while training for archery. I've mentioned a few now, but I'll talk to you about a few more. So stay tuned for the next episode where we'll talk about some of those drills that archery hunters can do. For firearms, if you're hunting with a gun or a muzzleloader, a rifle or a muzzleloader, you also need to still get in shape. You still need to make sure that you have that endurance built up. If you can arrive to the area where you're going to be hunting 2 or 3 days early, that is highly recommended so that you can get yourself acclimated, especially if you're coming from lower elevations, because some people can adapt quickly and some people won't. And altitude sickness is another one that I'll talk about in a future episode. So if you have not already subscribed or turned on notifications or followed Mac Outdoors and this podcast, then I would suggest that you do. Of course, I hope that you will listen again. If it's your first time here, I do appreciate you stopping by. And if you've been a listener for a while, I love feedback. I love when people ask me questions, and I love talking about things that can give you some information. So reach out to me. Let me know what questions you have. If you have suggestions, I'm always open to that. And if you would like to leave me a review on iTunes, it doesn't really help my algorithm, but it does help people see that the show is good, or it helps me know if there's something that I need to work on. I look forward to talking to you again, and hopefully I'll be 100% settled into my new office and back to the regular weekly schedule. Have a great one. Talk to you next time.
Hey, this is Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, host of the Armed Lutheran Radio podcast, reminding you that the podcast you're listening to is a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. Check out all the great content at selfdefenseradio.net.